Welcome to Built with Purpose. I am Chris Fay, and this is the show where vision meets execution and leadership leaves a legacy. From design studios to innovation hubs and product lines to skylines, we meet the people building more than great companies. They're creating culture, driving impact, and shaping what's next. These are the stories and strategies behind how the world gets built with purpose. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Built with Purpose. My name is Chris Fay. I'm the host of our podcast, and where we talk to leaders and executives and founders and CEOs across the architecture, engineering, construction, and manufacturing industry, and then those technology businesses that support it. Today, I'm with my man, Tony Iannessa, with Big Construction out of Chicago, Illinois. And Tony, man, welcome to the show, dude. I'm fired up that you're here.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate you having me.
You know, and when I told you this, I said, all right, we're going to be super casual. I want you to do this from your bedroom. I want you to look like super hip. And you delivered, man. You did it.
I nailed it.
Hopefully, hope there's any ladies now in a podcast, you typically would like listen, but obviously we'll be posting these videos. So people are like going to be admiring the chandelier over your head and the mirror and the hearth. So all good, man.
Most of the time, people just get to see me in a collared shirt, so I figured I'd keep my gym clothes on for you and give you a sneak peek inside.
Yeah, I love it, man. That's. I'm trying to unwind and get to know each other. And obviously, we've known each other just kind of on and off for a couple of years now, and met through business, and then through IPO that we're a part of. And so, man, I'm super excited to just kind of chat with you today. But before we get started, I want to throw a couple icebreaker questions off you now. So my first one is a little more just like tactical, boring. So you're in construction. You've started this company big. If you weren't doing this, what else would you be doing? Like what would be your dream job, or not in construction? What's your backup?
Gosh, I'd love to play golf for a living, have my name on the bag, and play on Sundays. But my handicap doesn't support that. So that would be a dream, to be a pro golfer, a good one. What I really wanted to do was. What I thought I really wanted to do was architecture. When I used to watch the Brady Bunch with my parents and saw Mike Brady on TV, I thought that was really, really cool. That got my wheels turning a little bit. And then I really wanted to be a real estate developer. And so I originally got into construction to kind of learn a piece of the business to go do real estate development. So I'd say probably in a perfect world for me, it'd be a semblance of sort of golf, which is a big passion of mine, and real estate development. So maybe building and running a really cool wellness focused golf center or retreat would be pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I know some developers, and the really successful ones actually have time to go play golf too. So, it's a different business model, high risk, high reward, but they tend to play more golf at least than I do. So
that's right.
Well, you mentioned we talked a little bit before, kind of in prep, you mentioned the health and wellness thing. So let me kind of dive in on that for just a second. So are you like, you all dialed into the health and wellness? Like where are you at? Where's your mind space in taking care of your body? I mean, it was one of the things that you said in golf.
Yeah. So I just celebrated my 40th birthday.
Congrats, man.
Thanks, dude. I made it. How old are you?
I'm 44.
All right. So for my 40th birthday, I got a couple things. I got a sauna and cold plunge. This is a way to answer the question. And then I got myself a Clearly CT scan, which is basically an artery 3D imaging using AI artery scan, because we have cardiovascular health issues in my family, and so to kind of show you where my head is at, in hopefully not midlife, but getting close to midlife. I'm thinking a lot about it. My wife is a cancer survivor, so she's 5-6 years ago went super, super healthy, and that helped kind of spark some things. And when you're faced with, issues like that, health issues and scares, you really take stock in it. So, try and limit alcohol as much as I can. I still do, pick my spots and enjoy sometimes when I can. Sauna cold plunge has been a really, really great, that sort of heat and cold contrast therapy is really good. I think for me, both I've got arthritic hips and arthritis in my body, so it really helps that. It's also just a great kind of mental mental fix, clears your brain. 3 minutes in that 35-degree water will kind of like just really, it's a good natural anxiety killer.
Yeah. Well, and you live in Chicago, so you have a lot of natural cold plunge. See, down in the South where I live, we have to buy this cold water, but you got a lot of cold water around you, though.
Yeah, I do. I've been known to jump into Lake Michigan
Okay,
right around this time or within the next couple of weeks, and my kids always get a kick out of that, seeing me dive into the water. They think I'm crazy, but yeah, I enjoy that stuff. I try and do like pretty heavy weight training 5 days a week, and I walk a ton, and walking has been really, really nice. I think, again, both for really nice fat burning, but also it's a great way to clear your mind. And I do some of my best plotting and planning and visionary work walking around. I know you hear that all the time I know Steve Jobs was sort of known for that stuff, and I'm not Steve Jobs, but I do believe in walking. For sure.
Yeah, I honestly, I think that, one of the things that I had a hard time in kind of being a CEO and a founder and running companies. And I think I originally was like, the harder I work, the more hours I put in, the more production I'm going to get. Right. And I've had so many people, just like coaches and mentors through my life, that have just said, Chris, like, one of the best things that you can do as a CEO is like, be prepared to make really good decisions, to have clear mind, to make sure that you can forward think and reflect. Because we were talking about CFOs earlier, and just, as CEO, you need to be really looking at where the company is going. And it's hard to do that when you're in the trenches every day. And so, I think trying to find those intentional moments, and it was not pre-programmed in me, and even my wife has said, she's like, Chris, you need to like just chill for a minute. Like, can you stop? Can you take a break and clear your mind? And so for me, like, I've always enjoyed working out and exercising. It's always been a big part of my life. I do think there's something about when you are in your 40s, because when I was in my 30s, the whole concept of longevity and where am I going to be was not as top of mind. But like right now, I'm in the same boat, man. I've signed up. There's a company called Wild Health that's kind of a longevity concierge medicine. They do a lot of the scans and DNA testing and really kind of focus on longevity. I'm trying to get a routine going, in balancing kind of work and family life, and also some time for myself. And but one of the things that I used to clear my mind the most with, and I don't do it anymore. I used to love mowing the grass. Like I would mow the grass, and I would edge, and I would blow off all the stuff, and it would take me like 2 hours. And it was so mindless. It was physical. You were outside, and then you could sit back. You're like, look what I did. Like, this was awesome, man. So I'm with you, man. I mean, just having those intentional times. And so how do you balance that? So, I mean, tell me a little bit about this kind of you as a CEO, and maybe weave in a little bit of, tell me about Big and how you got started, and a little bit about the company. But then I want to kind of come back a little bit and just talk about this balance, of kind of the stress and the pressure and the demands of running a company, but then also making sure that you have time for your family, and also making sure that you've got time for yourself. So give me some intro, and let's hop back into that convo in a bit.
Yeah, it's a good jumping off point, because Big will be 9 years old next month. And so I was 31 when I started the company. And like you, it sounds like I was working basically every day from 5 or 6 a.m. to much, much later into the evening. When I started, we didn't even have kids yet. So my oldest is about the same age as our business. So I've watched my almost 9-year-old daughter and our almost 9-year-old company grow up together. And to your point, 16-hour days is sort of, at a certain stage, is what's needed from a founder, and it's what's needed from an entrepreneur. And clearly, if you're able to do that, which it sounds like you were, and I know I was, that's a strength, because most people can't do that. But I've also learned now over time through coaching and therapy and other areas that a strength overused becomes a weakness. So that, like, put it on my back, entrepreneur, founder, scrappy mentality works up to a point, but it's not scalable. It's exhausting, both for you and the people around you. I think as you go through stages of the business, you recognize when you get to a certain point, and I don't know what whatever that is for you, it can't be all on the founder. One, it's not sustainable. that person is going to burn out. Me or you, in this case, is going to burn out. Two, it's really not scalable, meaning you can't build a business all around one person, and that person can't be responsible for everything. It just doesn't work. And then really the third piece of it, as I thought more about it, is if you're trying to create enterprise value and a brand that's able to sort of go past the founder, you have to have other people involved, and you have to have scalable systems and teams and processes. Otherwise, you're not really creating any enterprise value, specifically in service businesses where we're relying upon people. And so it took me a while to kind of realize that. And when I was able to maybe push a little bit of my own ego aside, I realized you can go a lot further with a team than you can yourself. You can go faster by yourself. So I think, again, at like those early stages when you're on your own, you can move real fast, but you get to a point where moving fast and not far doesn't do you a lot of good. And so as an organization, we've shifted into this big 2.0 about 18 months ago. And big 2.0 looks a lot different than big 1.0, but what got us to year 8 isn't going to get us to year 18. So that was an emotional decision that I had to make because, as you know, as a founder, you have a lot of your own personal value and sort of your identity tied up in that business. And to be able to take a step back and realize, like, you're not going to go any further on your own. You need to really create a strong leadership team and teams underneath them and some scalable processes. It was probably a harder emotional journey for me than it was really a logical, tactical journey. And so being able to separate those two from the emotion and the logic, I was like, it took me a while, but we're well on our way, and I've never been more energized in what I'm doing every day than I am today.
So what, kind of go back to that. So you're starting the business, you're making it happen. Like when you go back, like was there a moment? Was there a coach or a mentor? Was there something that happened to you that you're like, dude, I got to make a change? Like, was there an inflection point that you can remember? Or do you feel like it was just kind of this gradual shift in mindset and maturity and running a business and learning more?
So I had, Chris, a dangerous combination of drive and naivety. And boy, is that a powerful combination. So I was sitting at a restaurant at 1 South Dearborn, which is kind of like right in the central loop, right in the heart of the central business district, with the president of my former organization, who was a mentor to me. His name was Rick Mattiota. And Rick died recently, within like the last 5 years, way too young. So I do miss him. And I shared this at his funeral, by the way. He said to me over an old fashioned, you should leave and you should start your own business. You're never going to get what you want here. I've been here 20 plus years. I've never gotten what I wanted here. Don't make the same mistake as me. I'm paraphrasing a bit. But when you have the guy who's essentially running the company I was a vice president. I was 29. I had really elevated myself super quickly. And in theory, got everything I thought I wanted. But that was a really profound statement to hear from the president of that company. And ultimately, that's what I decided to do.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then do you think, so when you kind of made that leap, and, we were talking a second ago, you're probably it's just like brute force, naivety, just drive, you're making it happen. This idea of kind of getting to big 2.0. Is that like, what kicked that off? Did your team come and say, Tony, you gotta let the reins go? Or like, did something happen in the business, or did you have a coach, or is it, like I said, or is it just like consistent learning? Cause I think as like founders and CEOs, like we are, and I'm assuming I'm putting words in your mouth, but like, I feel like every day on the job is a learning experience. And like, I'm a better CEO today than I was yesterday, and than I was a year ago, and I believe that over the next couple of years I'll continue to grow in mine. But there's definitely those points. So I'm just curious, like, to get to big 2.0 to help you figure out a way to scale through others. Anything that you experienced in the last 9 years that got you to think that way?
Yeah. So I mentioned before, strength overused becomes a weakness. I think one of my greatest strengths is that drive, that focus on results. I have the ability to achieve anything I set my mind to, which is a great strength. And when you're trying to push that same mentality onto other people, it can be exhausting. I also think as a visionary person who's trying to think out in the future and push without the right people around me, I was burning them out. So to answer your question maybe more directly, I lost a pretty senior leader who left to go start a different business, and not in construction, but that made me kind of take a step back and think like, okay, what's happening here? I lost another senior leader not too far after that. And I kind of had to like look around and say like, well, what's the common theme here? And the common theme was me. And so I really had to wonder like, well, what could I have done differently? And what I've realized is my style, my mentality of like that brute force, just drive through the brick wall and get it done, is exhausting. And not only is it exhausting for me, but it's even more exhausting for the people around me. The other thing I learned was like, you got to give people credit and recognition, and it's important to celebrate what you've done and where you've gotten to without forgetting where you're going. So I was the guy who was like, well, there's a mountain. I'm going to climb that mountain, jump on my back, throw the supplies in my pack. We got it. Problem is when you get to the top of the mountain, there's nothing up there. So people like me and probably people like you, this is a common theme in YPO, tend to say, okay, well, there's the next mountain. I'm going to climb that one. When I get up there, it's going to be awesome. I'm going to be fulfilled and energized. And you climb the next mountain, whatever that next achievement or goal is. And you recognize like, there's nothing up here either. And so what you should be doing really is looking down and saying, gosh, we climbed these two mountains. This is incredible how far we've gotten. Celebrating the wins, and then saying, okay, now what's next? There's also this continuing on the analogy. There's also this psychological concept of when you look up at a height by yourself versus when you look up at a height as a team. When you're with other people, that height is viewed in your brain as 20% lower than when you're by yourself. And I think that's so profound. And then there's African proverbs: go fast, go solo, go far, go together. All these sort of things is a long way of saying I realized I was, as a visionary trying to play integrator, I was burning people out because I'm casting a vision out. Here's the direction. And before those people can tactically implement the way to get to that direction, I've already changed it.
Yeah.
And it's just the whiplash. Is any of this resonating?
Man, I'm telling you what, dude, it is resonating like crazy. Like I'm very much like you. I mean, I'm super driven. I believe that I can outwork anybody around me. I work at an extremely fast pace and I can get a lot done in a very compressed period of time. And I think used to believe that everybody should be like me. Everybody should run at the same pace and everybody should be wired like I do. And they should understand what I'm trying to accomplish. So I could get something done and move on to the next thing and then move on to the next thing and go over here. But my team's still trying to implement this first thing and drive change. And they're like, Chris, you're talking about like this. We haven't even gotten this in place. And one of the things I've actually kind of earlier in my career, I built that culture of fragmentation in the business. And we were trying to do way too many things well in shorter periods of time. And so we became super fragmented and we weren't getting things across the finish line. And I'll be honest with you, man, it hadn't been until probably the last, I'll say 3 to 5 years that we've gotten much better at saying, look, like, let's shrink the focus and let's just be excellent at doing that as opposed to trying to get too much. And I think one of the things that was freeing for my leadership team was like telling them like, look, I'm not going to stop seeing shiny objects and bringing ideas to the table. It's your responsibility to help hold me accountable. Like we're all in this together, man. So like when I tell us to do something, don't just say, okay, right? Be like, hey, Chris, we're in the middle of doing this. And like, we've got to get this done first before we move on to the next thing. And so, for us, we call it psychological safety, but I had to free my leadership team to be okay pushing back on me. And I think originally they were probably just doing what I was doing because I was running, man. And so trying to figure out a way to build that culture of, putting the people in place and telling them that I want you to lead and I want you to do this, and don't let my style and my tactics, like, let's use what I'm good at to do good, but don't let me derail us from the things inside of the business. And so I think that was freeing for them and to put some expectations on it. And I think when I first told them that, they're like, yeah, whatever, man, I got you. Just tell me what you want me to do. And I'm like, no. Like, so trying to find, and you talk about like recognition, like finding those moments where you can recognize them doing the right thing. Like, hey, you just push back on me, bro, and I appreciate you doing that. Like, that's exactly what I need you to do. I'll stop talking about this new initiative and roll on. So yeah, I mean, it's like you're sitting there like we're in the same boat, man. I mean, we're saying the exact same thing.
Yeah, and it is important in those moments to reiterate and through your actions what you're saying, right? What you just said is exactly right. When you see it happening, you have to say, "Hey, I want more of that." Like that. That's exactly what we need. I started a couple things I've done. I started if I've got an idea and I'm presenting it to our senior leaders, I will say, "All right, let's poke holes in this." It's kind of like the Navy SEAL attack. They spend months and weeks or months planning these missions, and then they sit together as a team and they're like, all right, blow holes in this. Because what am I not thinking about? What are the blind spots? Let's run through all of this again. Let's ask uncomfortable questions. Let's challenge each other. But God, is that easier said than done?
Oh yeah, man. Well, especially, and I think when you've spent time thinking about stuff and working through stuff at the level that we do, and then, you've got to be able to kind of check your ego and be like, all right, tell me, like that's good. I want what's best for the business. So yeah, that's awesome that you're doing that, man. It sounds like, and I will say, I think that, just to back you up and give you some a compliment, is that I think that some of the best companies out there are run by visionaries and CEOs and founders and leaders that do have that pace, that they do have that drive and that desire. And when they are balanced with the right infrastructure, it can be wildly inspiring to the company. And one of the things we talk about is leadership is not a title, it's a state of mind. And you're leading by example, whether you know it or not. So the example that you're setting, people are watching you. And I think in our roles, everybody's watching. And one of the things that we can do is create this buzz and this excitement and this energy about where the company's going, because people, they want to be part of a winning team, man. Like people probably come work to you and they're like, man, Tony, that dude is on fire, man. But man, he's taking us places. Like, I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of that culture. I want to be a part of that excitement. And yeah, he might drive me crazy from time to time. But I mean, personally, I think that's what makes the best culture and the most exciting business to be a part of, is when you have somebody like you have somebody like casting that vision and, driving a little bit harder and motivating others, not just through the words, but just through your actions. So, that's probably why you've built a successful company and are 9 years in and celebrating big 2.0. And so, it's a good thing. And I think that's what you're talking about, kind of strengths and weaknesses. It's a really good thing. It builds a great company.
Well, thank you. And to that point, one thing I like to say is vision without execution is hallucination. So to kind of tie those two concepts together, what I failed to do in Big 1.0 was have an integrator. I mean, EOS is like, you have a visionary seat, you have an integrator seat. We now have that in place, that integrator seat. That's not the same personality style or person that's a visionary, and for good reason. Because our president, Chris Fay, who's chief integrator, sits in that integrator role. He has to be the one to actually tactically implement, a 12 or 18 month strategy. I'm thinking in year 3 to 5 years out, and Chris is thinking in next year and the following. And then we have to get our other senior leaders thinking quarter by quarter, or maybe 3 to 9 months out. That was really hard to realize as well. And that was another valuable lesson that I learned. But if you talking about vision and then having no plan to implement that vision, it's just a hallucination.
Tell me about the EOS. I mean, obviously I'm familiar with EOS, and we run a similar system called Rhythm, but it's based on the same thing. Like how long has that operating system been in your company? Was it hard to get that in place? Did you hire an implementer to help put it in place? Or do you have somebody with you today that's helping kind of create that culture? I mean, tell me about that.
We rolled it out in 2018, I want to say. We self-implemented. One of the benefits of a construction company is you tend to have a lot of folks that are very process, operationally sound folks.
Project managers.
Exactly. Yeah. So at that time, we did have somebody internally that was really that mind that could really walk us through and implement it. And I've got, guys in my YPO group or Vistage group that I've got it's probably like 50-50 that have self-implemented or hired an implementer. I don't know. I'm not opposed to implementers. I think they can absolutely add a lot of value. And honestly, we probably missed out on a percentage of the value of it. But the ironic part is, having said all that, we ran on EOS for let's say from 2018 to 2023 until I realized there's nobody sitting in the integrator seat. So maybe we would have benefited from an implementer.
Yeah, Rocket Fuel Talks. That's the whole book, right?
What a great book. Yeah. So anyways, what we've done most recently that I'm super proud about is, so up until 2024, EOS was only at the SLT level, the senior leadership level. And now it's down at the PM meetings every week. It's down at the supers meetings. We've got a secondary kind of leadership group that is running on EOS. They're reading traction. They're doing book reports and kind of chatting about traction. So to hear people in our company, to overhear people in our company talk about progress, not perfection, and visionary integrator and rocks and scorecard metrics, it's awesome. It's just super, super cool. And I wish I had pushed it down sooner.
Yeah, because once you drive that that common language, right? And we finally have just gotten, we self-implemented this Rhythm systems, and we're probably 3 or 4 years into it, so right probably around the COVID timeframe. But we started the same thing, kind of started at the SLT level, then we've got down to all the leadership teams, so that now Rhythm calls them huddles. So all of the huddles that we're in are now run the same way. And so you can hop in and out of huddles and see that actually work, and, tracking, KPIs and priorities. And it's when you see it working, there's a little bit of pushing the rope at the beginning side, but you see it working and throughout the business. And like I said before, to help prioritize, because that was the biggest reason we needed to do it, is trying to make sure we're focusing on, the most important aspects. So talk about the integrator for a second. That's a role that's not in the company. So you look at the leadership level and you're like, I got Tony, CEO, and then I've got this SLT. This business is built here. I'm missing the integrator. So I need to insert a net new role. I need to insert a president or a COO. And, it's not an hourly position. It's an investment. It's they're typically expensive, highly capable individuals that are, to do that. What was there a trepidation? Were you like making that investment and you're like, dude, I read the book. I know it's going to work, but I've got to go spend X dollars to put this role in. I mean, what was that like?
All those things, right? And I've read a lot of books. So, and some of the stuff works and some of it doesn't. So yeah, there's absolutely trepidation. I decided probably in 2023. Yeah. Let's call it like mid-year 2023. I got out of a mid-year retreat with my current leadership team, and I'm like, this is not working. So started the process. I hired an executive search firm in town. They scoured the market. They found, I don't know, let's say a dozen folks, and I interviewed, let's say half a dozen folks. Ultimately, I picked someone that I knew that I had actually brought to the dance outside of the executive search firm. And the reason that I chose Chris, it came down to two candidates. One other candidate was probably a more similar to me type person. And we did the whole thing, man. We had coaches, Hogan personality assessments. I spent quite a bit of time and money on this search. And ultimately, when I had the two candidates side by side, Chris was the person whose personality was almost an opposite of mine. And that's really largely why I made the decision. And of course, I knew him as well. And so I knew that he was a good, kind, humble, hungry, smart human being. And so that made that decision pretty easy. And he's been there 13 months now. And the change is enormous. It's really hard to quantify in words how much that has impacted us positively.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
But it was definitely scary, because you think anytime you add to an organization, it's like a glass of water, and you know there's going to be a splash, and you just really hope that that splash isn't so big that half the water falls out of the glass. So I was very careful and very intentional. And I really love an onboarding 30, 60, 90 plan for folks, especially at that level, where, Chris, the first 30 days, all you're going to do, the only deliverable you have for me, first 30 days, is that you've sat down for an hour one-on-one with every single one of our employees. Obviously, he's doing other stuff during that month, but I don't care, that all that other stuff is aside. 30 days. I know you want to come in and make an impact and start pushing, but you got to build the trust with the people first.
Yeah.
Next 30 days was, okay, set up deep dives with every project team and go through the costs and go through the schedule, and have the project manager and the pre-con folks and the supers talk to you about these projects and the clients and challenges, and dig into an accounting meeting and dig into a project manager, really understand all of our process. How does a billing get done? Don't say anything. Don't make any recommended suggestions. Just listen and take notes. Mm-hmm. And then the next 30 days, you've now met all the folks in the company. You've now sat and learned all of our processes. Start formulating a plan to make a change. So after 3 months, his deliverable for me was, here's what I propose we do for the next 2 quarters. And we did a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
But by that point, right, it's day, let's call it 120, and we're starting to impact change from somebody that everyone has met and trusted.
Yeah. Yeah. They've got some clout in the business. And
yes. And he understands, and he's listened, and he's the last thing you want to do is have somebody come in and say, we're changing this process. And it's there's 3 people at the table that created that process.
Right. Hey, this is the way we did it at our last place. I'm going to go ahead and put that in place here without really understanding the reasons why.
Could have been a disaster. And we just hired our first HR person. She's doing a very similar approach. We hired a pretty senior marketing lead. She did the same approach. And so far, so good.
Yeah, that's great. No, we did something. We just hired a new VP of people and culture, and she came in, and the same thing is look, your job right now is just to get to know us. Get to know what's working, what's not, talk to the people before we drive change. And expectations for your first 30 to 60 days are super low, right? I just want you to get to know everybody and get to know us, and you'll be so much better enabled, right? And empowered. And to your point, I think just building that camaraderie and that buy-in from the others that, okay, this person actually wants to hear what I have to say, and they want to do good things in the company. And so, man, let me tell them. And then when that individual takes that and puts that into action and drives change in the company, I mean, it's man, now it's just infectious, man. So that's so cool. I do have a pivoting to a question that I wrote down for you, kind of going back to the name of your company. I know why you capitalize BING, I think, but there might be a story. But why did you choose? You're starting this company. Why did you choose Big Construction?
So when I originally started this business, I had a guy. So the long and the short of it is, I got fired from that last company I was telling you about, because what I wanted and what they wanted were very different things. So once that happened, my phone started ringing, and I had a ton of opportunities at my disposal. But I found a guy out in the suburbs of Chicago, and he said to me, "Listen, I'll incubate this business for you. So I'll fund it. You go get office space downtown. create a separate business unit called Build Tech Interiors Group. So the Build Tech was the company that sort of incubated us. And he said, listen, I've got HR set up, I've got insurance and IT and all this other sort of stuff. We'll go into this together as partners. And you don't have to create anything. You just go out there, sell, get some new, hire some people, go get some clients and build, and don't worry about the back office, which, in concept is a great deal. What we found within about 12 months is that while their business happened to also be in construction, the markets were so different that, we ended up having to recreate the accounting procedures. We ended up having to do a lot of our own HR and IT, and it got to the point where there was really no synergies. There was no opportunity to share clients between the two. They were doing a lot of outlet retail stuff. We were doing downtown commercial interiors. They were non-union. We were union. They were lump sum competitive bidding. We were doing CM negotiated work, and on and on and on. The pay disparity between the roles was huge, and so it just didn't make a ton of sense. So we had that in place. That incubation period was about 18 months. So January 1st, 2018, we went from Build Tech Interiors Group to Big Construction and took 100% control of the company.
Interesting. So it's an acronym. I honestly wouldn't have thought about that.
It was, but like the truth is that even at that time, everyone just called us Big. And so it was a really nice, easy transition to make people just like, nobody really knew what was happening and they didn't care. Same people.
They already knew you as Big.
That's right.
Yeah. How cool is that? Yeah.
The other thing is we got a great URL with Build Big, because when you're giving somebody like that email over the phone, anybody can understand Tony@buildbig.com. It's easy. So that was an added benefit.
I love it. No, I love it when you can have a company name, and we don't have this in our companies, but when you have a company name, but then you can have an action word as that URL. I think it adds some swagger to the brand. So no, I like it a lot. Yeah, I was always like, they're in construction, they're trying to build things big. Why is it all capitalized? Well, it's probably because the word is big and they want to make the letters big, and so that's super cool.
Well, it's funny because we've for years, when Crane's Chicago Business would write about us, we were like, you got to capitalize all three. And they were like, that's not grammatically correct. We have editors, we have standards. And we're like, well, that's just what it is. And so, 8-9 years later, we've gotten them to get it right. But yeah, they were like, this isn't grammatically correct. We're like, yes, we understand that.
That's the point.
Exactly.
We're trying to be a little different. God, it gives me like PTSD when I started Treble Hook. We were going through I wanted it all lowercase, for a casual, swaggery style about it. And man, I fought with our people that we hired on this, and they're like, it needs to be. You could do all caps, but the best way to do it is a capital T and capital H, and that way it's kind of two words coming into one. And I was like, I want it all lowercase. And like, well, but if you write a press release or somebody writes about you and the sentence starts with Treble Hook, you're going to have a lowercase T, and they're going to want to put a capital T. And so, man, we went back and forth. And finally I was like, whatever, just capitalize a T, capitalize H. Let's call it a day. But
you've worn me down.
Yeah. You win, man. Question I had, I wrote a note down a second ago. So you said, and I can bring this back a little bit of a story, because my wife, TPM, this family business that I run as well, is 53 years old. My wife grew up in the business. She was an only child, and so she always talked about the business being her older brother or older sister, what have you, kind of these kids growing up together. And there's all sorts of stuff we can talk about there. But I'm curious, like you said, you had a child about the same time that Big was coming along. And so, they're here kind of growing up together. Like, how do you see, do you kind of forward looking, like, are you like, man, I would love my kid to work at Big one day? Or like, are they two different things? Do you think about this like legacy of a family business? Is it like, talk to me about that? Cause you got two, and do you only have one child?
I have three. I have two daughters and a son.
Gotcha. So talk about the three. Like, how do you think about the business, and how do you think about your family? Do they coexist? Do you have a vision of them coming together at some point? Like what's that look like for you?
I think the short answer is I don't have any intention of my kids being involved in big construction at all, for a variety of reasons. One, I saw an awful lot of nepotism at previous employers. It's really not a great way to scale a company. I'm sure you've seen it around the YPO circles as well. There's a lot of folks that I interact with in YPO that sort of act like they hit a triple when they were actually born on third base. That's just not my style. My wife and I really believe like you should work and earn anything that comes to you. So having said that, I'm incredibly young to be in the position that I'm in, which means my kids are incredibly young. So I've sat recently with a couple of mentor friends' kids who are 22 getting out of college trying to figure out what they want to do. And their dads are in similar positions to me. I think my kids are a little too young to really determine like what I want for them. But at the same time, I do want them to kind of figure that out on their own. And that is going to be really hard when you grow up with access and some privilege. That takes a lot of discipline to ensure that your kids are, if you want to be successful, you need to grind, you need to work. And so as of today, with, again, my oldest is 9. If my oldest was 19, I think I probably have a little bit more visibility into it. Today, I don't have any desire to, well, I could say I don't really want them to be involved in big construction at all. But if one of them came to me and said, hey, I want to start a construction company, I would gladly talk to them about that. But we're talking 15 years from now.
Yeah, you got some time.
I got some time. I mean, my son's not even 2 yet. So that is unique. I think there's a lot of people in my seat that have kids that are getting ready to go to college, and they really do have to think about that, because you talk about splash in the cup. That might pour all the water out of the cup if you don't do it right.
It could, yeah. No, and I think it's interesting. How do you balance, raising your kids? I mean, I've got 2 boys that are 14 or 13 and 15. How do you raise them in this environment that we live in today? And we're enabled to do nice things, and we do things together, and we travel, but also give them the foundation that they need to be successful, and make sure that when they enter the working world, that they've got some perspective on what it's like to work hard and what it's like to struggle. And what's been interesting, my son, it's really come to light. He's a freshman in high school. It's really come to light with him in athletics, as a freshman, because he's the junior man on the totem pole. He made varsity lacrosse. He thinks he's this good lacrosse player coming out of middle school. He's on varsity lacrosse. His head's the size of a vehicle, and it's been humbling for him. And what's been interesting, and I've tried to sit down and talk to him about this, is I like when he tells me he's struggling. Sometimes my word is good, and it makes him mad. And he's like, why do you keep telling me good? I'm like, bro, like the world is full of struggles, man. Like you are, like in this instance, small, non-threatening instance, you're a freshman, man. Like you ain't going to start. You're not good enough. Right. So shift your mindset, drop your ego, and figure out a way to just bust your butt out there and learn as much as you can and embrace the struggle. Because the reality is that struggle is where the growth comes from. And if you want to grow, you gotta live those struggles and just know, I'm not going to be here to be like, oh man, I'm sorry you didn't make the team or get to play. Like, no, dude, that's good. Like get your face kicked in from time to time. And, so I think like I've been trying to figure out a way as a parent, like how to balance that. How do I do the things that we want to do as a family, but instill these values in my kids, so that they have this great appreciation for what could be, but they've got this foundation. I think to some extent it's probably where and I don't ever talk about other people's parenting styles or anything, but I believe some of the nepotism is for whatever reason they didn't learn those foundational skills that they needed to be successful early on. So when they got out into the working world, that's where some of those expectations came from. So, but it's a balance, man. It's, you look at all the statistics of, Gen 1 businesses and Gen 2 businesses and how it just continues to dwindle down. And it's something we got to be thinking about as parents,
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I believe as parents, you do have a lot of control over your children and who they become by what you do inside your own four walls. Because to your point, I think you want to create some struggle. When you go outside of our four walls, you're going to interact with people you're going to have situations that are going to be challenging. You're going to interact with people that aren't necessarily aligned with how you were raised. And I want to create an environment for my kids where they can go learn the hard way, as long as they come back to that mean that I've created for them. In other words, here's our family core values. Here's what we stand for. Here's what we're about. I recognize, listen, as kids grow up, they're going to make mistakes. They're going to make friends that they probably shouldn't be spending time with. And I think a lot of parents in the last 20 years have been trying to sort of puppet master their kids. And I see them when they come out of school and they don't have the critical thinking skills to live on their own and make good decisions. So I do think you can control a lot in your own four walls and say, listen, you're an Iannessa. We have Iannessa core values.
That's awesome.
When my kids are a little older to actually comprehend them, then we'll be talking about them. But like you said about your son, my daughter's much younger, but I've had situations because she's a little bit like her dad, and I'm a recovering perfectionist. She's still a perfectionist.
she's a rising perfectionist. Yeah. She hasn't learned she's a perfectionist yet.
Yes. I haven't put any Brene Brown on her yet, but I will. She's like crying, she didn't get a medal in a swim meet, right? And I was in the car with her and I'm like, gosh, this is kind of the first moment for me in this situation. What would I have wanted to hear at that age? And I've learned empathy through therapy, finally. It's not natural to me. And I said to her, you did great. Did you try your hardest? She said, yeah, I tried my hardest, but I lost. And I was like, okay, remember how this feels. Because the only way you won't have this feeling the next time is if you work harder and harder and harder. If you outwork everybody else, you outpractice everybody else, and you focus, you will win the medal. But you got to realize it's up to you. There's nothing I can do. There's nothing your coach can do. If you want to win, remember how this feels. And if you never want to feel like this again, the only way to win is to work harder than everybody else.
You got to get comfortable getting uncomfortable, man.
Exactly. And then it's like, if you aren't willing to put in that work, did you really want that?
Right. Yeah. Or did you just want the accolade and you thought it'd be easy and kind of go out there? But yeah, learning that struggle and that process. I still think it's something like today. And it's like, us as leaders and CEOs, just trying to continually push ourselves to learn and to grow and to be uncomfortable. And I just think that learner's mindset, right? That kind of growth mindset is what separates people. People like yourself. So, I'm going to as we kind of wrap up here, I want to just kind of ask you a couple key. So kind of at the end of the podcast, what I've been doing is kind of this built with purpose, kind of lightning round questions. And so I got a couple for you that I wanted to ask you. And first one is, what's one word to describe yourself?
Driven.
Like that. You should get the website Driven Big. Do something with that later.
It's funny. It's one of our core values.
Is it really?
Oh yeah.
Love that, man.
Yeah.
What keeps you up at night? What's the thing that whether it's now or just as a CEO or in construction, what's the one thing you're thinking about that's keeping you up at night right now?
We have a workforce issue. That's a real thing. And meaning for every one person that joins the trades, 3 are retiring today. And so I don't know that it necessarily keeps me up at night, but it's something that needs to be solved. The part about that kind of keeps me up a little bit is really the fact that we've created a society where working in construction is viewed as a fallback. It's viewed as well, you better go to school and you better study hard or you're going to be hanging drywall. Well, not everyone is meant to have a 4-year degree. Not everyone is meant to go sit down at 9 o'clock in the morning and sit behind a computer and move numbers from one side of a page to another. And I think we've created this society where it's like people view construction as like a lower tiered industry. The reality is we've done a really piss poor job of marketing the industry more broadly. And I'm really trying to change that.
So let's lean into that a little bit. I said lightning round. Since it's my podcast, I can change this up. Like just lean into that a little bit. Like what can be done to access this? Because I've heard this exact same thing, and honestly, it's the same thing in the manufacturing space as well. This view of a laborer's job as an hourly laborer's job.
Let's call it blue collar, white collar.
Yeah, right. So is kind of frowned upon, but it's such a necessary thing, and actually can be wildly rewarding if that's what you choose to do in your career. So like how do you make that change? Do you change the impression? Do you like what can you do?
So there's a couple things. One, we need to start talking about it. I have a decent platform through social media and some of the stuff that I'm able to get the word out. So we've got a very intentional series of content that'll be coming out from our organization, mostly from me, challenging the higher educational industrial complex, talking about the workforce or the construction industry in a different way. I think it's really a marketing play right now. We need to attract people into the industry and make them realize, because it's not just construction. You're right. It's manufacturing. It's blue collar work. Would you rather graduate from a 4-year degree, $250,000 in debt, making $75,000 a year? Some of those loans are 8, 9, 10, 12% interest, by the way. Or if you really don't know what you want to do, what about if you went into a construction apprenticeship program, whether that's with a CMGC or a specialty trade, and by the time you were 22, that same age graduating, you're making $120,000 a year and you're debt free, and you've earned money while you've learned a tangible skill that can actually benefit society. Like, I know it sounds super logical, because if you really just put it down on paper, you're like, yeah, this path makes all the sense in the world. But we have to tell a different story.
You got to get the message out.
We got to tell a different story. So we're telling our own story as a company. I'm telling my story very loudly and a little spicy. But there's a group called tearthepaperceiling.org, and it talks all about this. And so it's funny, I just saw their ad on a bus station in downtown Chicago yesterday. So I think there's a movement. And there's some tailwinds here on this stuff. There's a lot of things going on in the news, as I'm sure you followed, about sort of shutting down funding for research at institutions, enrollments down. So I think we're transitioning. Wall Street Journal had a great article at the end of last year about the tool belt generation. And I always found it really interesting that private equity went super heavy into mechanical and plumbing, roofing businesses. Those are pretty smart guys. And so if they see that, they know that there's money in these businesses, or they wouldn't have invested. So I don't think we've done a good job of talking about how potentially lucrative, both financially and like professionally, our industry is. And I'm really trying to change that.
Well, and I also just think the industry is everywhere we go. It's everything we do. It's the facilities that you and I are sitting in right now. It builds the factories that all the mechanics and everything are in. And like, it is such an important part of our world and our infrastructure. And I agree with you, man. I think it's just the narrative. And, I think there's so many things out there. You talk in the medical space and the blue collar space. There's people that are, having trepidation getting in these industries. The job hasn't, to some extent has not really changed a tremendous amount. The perception has, and it's that narrative, it's that voice to help tell it. So that's interesting. I'll check out the Tear the Paper Ceiling. Be curious about that, and if there's anything we can do to help, certainly would love to kind of get that message out there. Because I agree with you, man. I think that everyone's wired differently, man. Everyone's come through different experiences. Not everybody's meant to, be a doctor or a CEO or a administrative assistant or a concrete laborer. But finding that path that you can be successful and learn and, grow a family and is extremely important. So that's really cool, man. I appreciate you saying that. So, I mean, as we kind of close up, man, like this was number one, this was awesome. We didn't talk really anything about construction outside of labor. Like I'll just tell you from, from the outside, man, I mean, you've built an awesome business, and to be 40 years old and to be 9 years in as founder and CEO of this company, and to be implementing EOS and to have your brand out there. I mean, dude, you should be so proud of what you've accomplished, and I can't thank you enough. Any kind of closing thoughts or anything that you had before we wrap up?
On that topic, thank you for the kind words. As I mentioned earlier, I think it's important for you too, for both of us and people like us to realize that we are probably hardwired to try and sail out and reach the horizon, but you'll never reach the horizon. And so looking back on some of those things and recognizing, gosh, if I had told myself 9 years ago I'd be here today, how cool would I have felt? How excited would I have been? Rather than always focusing on where am I going in the next 9 years. And so there's a real cool book called The Gap and the Gain, and it talks about being in the gain and being in the gap. Being in the gap is like, gosh, we got these rocks we got to complete. We got these quarterly goals and initiatives and objectives. And it's important to really take stock in what you've done without forgetting where you're going. And it's taken me almost a decade to learn that. But that's my wisdom that I've learned.
I think just we're wired like that, to be always kind of looking for the next thing. And sometimes it takes people slapping us, upside the head to say, look, man, like you've actually done some really awesome stuff, and it's amazing when you can look backwards a little bit and have some gratitude for what you've built and what you've overcome. It all of a sudden, it kind of makes the horizon, seem not so far away. But yeah, I'm with you, man. I appreciate it. I'm going to take that to heart as well. So, but man, thanks for catching up with us today. Tony Iannessa with Big Construction, buildbig.com. And man, thanks again for coming today. This is awesome. A lot of fun.
You got it. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate the time.
Okay. Thanks for joining me on Built with Purpose. If you have enjoyed today's episode, subscribe, share, and leave us a review. It helps more bold leaders find the show. For resources and show notes, visit our website and connect with me, Chris Fay, on LinkedIn. Until next time, keep building great companies, cultures, and legacies with purpose.